Oh, I almost forgot. Oh, yeah. This is going to be awesome. You know one of us is going to have to change, right? What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Montyverse review. I bet you'll never guess what movie we just saw. Well, I mean, you'll guess because it's in the title of the video. But that's right. We just got back from the newest movie from the MCU, Thor: Love and Thunder. And we're going to give a non-spoiler review. We're going to save our spoilery thoughts for a later video. But we're just going to give our quick out-of-the-theater reaction and our thoughts. So, Nikki, what did you think of Thor: Love and Thunder? And I know that you weren't a huge fan of Thor Ragnarok, so I'm really curious to see what you thought of this movie.
Yeah, so I kind of feel like I need to give a little bit of a disclaimer so people know where I'm coming from. So this is obviously a pretty hot take. I'm not really the biggest fan of Thor Ragnarok, which I think to some extent, I think I just don't vibe with Taika Waititi's sense of humor, because that's how I feel about a lot of his films. So I wasn't super high on Ragnarok and the sense of humor and just what they did with that movie. But I am a huge Thor fan, so I was looking forward to this movie anyway and was very curious about it. And I have to say, coming straight out of the theater, I honestly had a blast with it. A lot of the humor hit me a lot better than I think Ragnarok did. It's very, very on-brand type humor, but I thought it was a lot of fun, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the one word that I think we could all agree on. This movie is fun. It's a fun film. Outside of that, for me, I don't know, I'm kind of stuck in a middle ground with this movie. I really enjoyed a lot of it, but there were some things I wasn't too thrilled about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like a lot of the big emotional scenes are undercut in this movie right away. I feel like there's some stuff that we should absolutely have deep emotional moments without any humor that is 100% undercut with like a stupid joke, or just the scene itself is treated like a joke. And I think it's a disservice to the story this film is trying to tell. I think that overall it's a Taika Waititi film, so people expect it to be jokey, but I think this movie's a lot more jokey than I expected it to be, especially with the topics that it covers and the villain that's featured. But yeah, that's really my main complaint of the film. I wish that the scenes that were supposed to be serious were given time to breathe and to feel that emotional weight.
Yeah, the keyword that you said just now that I think hits the nail on the head, at least for me, is middle. I think if I had to do like a ranking like off the top of my head right now, I would say for me this is, as much as I enjoyed the movie, it's a mid-tier MCU movie, because as much fun as I have with it, I think it absolutely has some problems with it. You mentioned the emotionality. I didn't have as big an issue with the humorous beats as I think you did, because I think, for me at least, I think some of the emotional beats did hit, but I wouldn't say they did them perfectly, and by all means, the humor was very heavy-handed.
For me, a lot of the jokes landed. I mean, I enjoyed myself. I laughed, but surprisingly, like, the emotional stuff didn't hit me. And there's a lot of stuff that I have a very personal experience with that happens in this movie. I mean, there's illnesses and life-threatening situations that I have a lot of personal, deep experience with that I felt nothing for my first time viewing. That I absolutely should have felt something. I mean, there are emotional beats. I felt emotional at times, but nowhere near as much as I thought I would. But that's really... I said that already, so I don't want to keep beating that horse to death. Mm-hmm. What I will say is that my only other complaint, if I have two complaints, it's that, and that this movie, even though it's 1 hour and 59 minutes, it felt short.
Absolutely.
For all the things they were trying to do, right?
I would agree with that. And I was going to say where one of my, and we were talking about this before, is not to get into any kind of spoilers, but I would say one of the highlights in terms of performances is absolutely Christian Bale as Gorr the God Butcher. I thought he did a phenomenal job whenever he was on screen, but I kind of wish we got more of it.
Yeah, hashtag more Gorr. I want more Gorr the God Butcher. Definitely found myself going at times, where's Gorr? Like, really wanted more of him in the movie, and his lack of a presence made itself known multiple times throughout the movie. I wish we got more Gorr, and I wish we had more time to be with Gorr and to understand Gorr, and I wish we got more time to be with Jane and to understand Jane. But now onto the positive things. Those are the two best performances in this movie. Christian Bale and Natalie Portman are fantastic when they're allowed to be. Absolutely stellar. Christian Bale very much feels like... I feel like his performance as Gorr is going to be meme-worthy the same way that Ian McDermott's performance in Revenge of the Sith is meme-worthy. Like, so good, and you can tell he's having so much fun in the role, and he's just experimenting with things, and I really like the performance.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head with Natalie Portman and Christian Bale with their performance, because their characters are going through a lot in this movie, and I think they hit all of those beats, both the emotional but also the humorous ones, pretty well overall. What I appreciate is, obviously, Jane had been MIA and Ragnarok, and I think in terms of how she's kind of portrayed in this movie, in a way it's like she kind of... I don't know if naturally is the best way, but, like, it feels like this is the Jane we remember, but I enjoy watching her, like, tremendously in this. Yeah. Especially compared to how, I'm sure a lot of people feel this way. I didn't love how she was necessarily used in the Dark World, so I think this was definitely a great service to her character. No,
this film does wonders for Jane. It retroactively makes Jane so much more interesting, and it gives us... Because we do spend a little bit of time exploring Jane's past, not enough, I feel like. Is it bad that I wanted more Jane and less Thor in this Thor movie?
No, not necessarily, because I mean this is definitely a Thor movie. I think I remember years ago after they made the announcement of this movie and that Jane was coming back, and obviously we knew Valkyrie was coming back. I'm sure a lot of people were wondering, like, what is Thor's role in this now that Endgame has passed, and like what is he doing now? This is very much a Thor movie, though. There's no mistaking that, even with Jane taking up the Mighty Thor mantle.
But here's the thing. I love Hemsworth, and I'm glad that he's back as Thor. And this movie made me more excited to see him in Thor 5 than I was to see him in this movie. Mm-hmm. Like, Thor in this movie is essentially moronic and idiotic. And we got a nice progression of the character from Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Endgame. But I think that the character is essentially 100% a joke now, and that's problematic. I wanted him to get serious, and I wanted Gorr to be taken seriously. And while he does eventually take Gorr seriously, it's just Thor is essentially just an imbecile at this point. And I really want to see him mature, and I'm hoping we see that in Thor 5, but we didn't get that here.
I absolutely agree, and by all means, I'm with you. I love Hemsworth. He's always here to play, and I love Thor as a character. But what I was also going to say in terms of a positive is thinking of, without going into any kind of spoiler territory, there was a good number of characters and actors that I was very intrigued to see in this movie who, regardless of the size of their role, I thoroughly enjoyed seeing in a variety of capacities in this movie.
Yes, I mean... Listen, they spoiled this in the trailer, so we'll talk about it. Russell Crowe is in this movie as Zeus, and he does this terrible Greek accent that's so bad that I love it. And I just wanted to hear him talk for like an hour straight. It's great. They use essentially Zeus to show the example that gods are derelict in their jobs, and they don't care about anything. All they care about is themselves. And essentially, Zeus is our gateway into the minds of all of the other gods that serve under Zeus. And we see a lot of other gods, and there's a lot of funny moments in that presentation. But essentially, that's what Zeus is here for. And I think Russell do services that job perfectly. He's very good. But what did you think of Russell Crowe? Because I know you had thoughts.
I don't know if I have like super in-depth thoughts. I kind of think he was fine. I think in terms of the role he has to play in this movie, I think he does it very well. I don't know if he was as much of a standout for me. If anything, there were other things in that whole sequence with him that I think actually stood out to me a little bit more.
When they were on Omnipotent City, which is straight from the comics. This is my other problem with this movie. It's essentially like they took the entire Jason Aaron run of Thor Thor God of Thunder to Unworthy Thor to the Mighty Thor featuring Jane Foster as Thor, and they kind of smushed it into one movie that's under 2 hours. And you really feel that. And that's just something I want. The story, let's talk about the story because we haven't touched on that yet. I feel like it didn't find its footing until over halfway through the movie. I feel like there was setup, and like you kind of maybe saw where they were going with it, but for me it didn't really it didn't really mature. Like the story itself didn't know what it wanted to be until like about halfway through the movie.
That's where I think I might disagree with you a little bit, because I think in terms of when you're talking about the actual plot getting from A to B, I think like it's pretty clear like what the actual sequence of events are. What I think kind of negatively impacts it is the sheer number of characters and trying to address everything going on with all of them is where I think they kind of lose you a little bit, because you can't, like we talked about before, you can't super delve into as much as you want to with the time we have.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there are moments in here that I was very shocked by, and then immediately get undercut. So there's a lot of like stakes that get undercut throughout this story, and I feel like the story in itself is very simplistic. It feigns complexity, but at the end of the day, it's a very simplistic story. When I crave complexity from all of the elements, like the elements are there to tell a very complex story, and I think I feel like this movie was cut. Like I feel like this movie felt like it was chopped at points. It
really does, and we haven't even talked at all about Valkyrie yet, who, even though, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of Ragnarok, I thoroughly enjoy her, Tessa Thompson, and Valkyrie as a character in Thor Ragnarok. And she's still good here, but again, I think we lose a lot of delving into Valkyrie and where she's been, even though I think the trailers made it seem like they would go a little bit more into it. So I think that was a little bit of a disappointment.
I don't know what happened, but I feel like there was a more in-depth movie somewhere throughout the process of editing, and they kind of just decided, like, you know what, jokes every 30 seconds, and that's the version of the movie we got. And listen, a lot of people are gonna love it. If you love Ragnarok and you love Taika's sense of humor, you're going to love this movie. If you liked Ragnarok, you are going to like this movie. I don't think that this is a bad movie by any means. I don't think it's a movie I like it, and I definitely enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it's top 10 for me at the moment. I want to watch it again because I feel like upon a second watch, maybe I will kind of temper my expectations, because as a comic book reader, the God Butcher story arc in the comic is one of my favorite comics of all time. So for me, I had expectations coming into this. So maybe if I temper my expectations on a second viewing, I will enjoy it a lot more. But for now, I'll say that it's probably like a 6.5 out of 10, maybe inching its way to a 7 for me.
I'm in the same boat. For me, it's pretty, like I said before, it's very much mid is kind of the key word for me to describe it. I would give it at the moment a 7 out of 10. I think it's very enjoyable. I think I enjoy it more than I think it is a good quality film necessarily, if that makes sense. And by all means, it's very heavily flawed, but I still think it's very enjoyable. I still like it. It has a lot of great things in it, I think. But like you said, the pieces were there. They just didn't perfectly come together.
Yeah, and that's fine. This is another good MCU movie. It's not going to change the world, but you're going to have a blast watching it, and you're definitely going to laugh. You may cry. And you're just gonna have fun.
And we didn't even mention the soundtrack.
That's something I forgot. Like, I literally wanted to bring that up. The score, like, there's so many Guns N' Roses songs in this movie that all go so hard. When like the soundtrack goes so hard. Not only that, but the score itself.
The music all around was phenomenal. Which again, I think that's what a lot of people will go into after Ragnarok, because that was a huge highlight of Ragnarok. I think. And it definitely, and it, like, the other thing I'll say is this movie is definitely a vibe, is another way to describe it.
I don't even know who did the score for this movie, but I didn't even look it up afterwards, but they did a fantastic job conveying the weight. Like, the soundtrack feels like a godly soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it feels epic and grandiose in scale.
Right.
And you feel when the music comes on, you feel it.
You feel it, and it's not distracting. Like, yeah, those songs are very recognizable, but they fit with the tone I think they're going for, at least within those scenes. And it's just a blast to listen to, and like it really just gets you going as you watch it.
Yeah, but anything else that we missed? I think that covers everything for me.
I think that is for me as well. Like you said, I probably will have to rewatch it at some point too, because my opinions have drastically changed after giving them some time to ponder for a little bit. I mean, as much as I was poo-pooing on Ragnarok, it has honestly improved for me over the years as I kind of just get a better gist for what they were going for. But no, I think we pretty much covered the gist of it.
Yeah, I mean, guys, go check it out. And if you're curious, there are 2 after credit scenes. I would recommend sticking around for both of them. They're both, I would say, somewhat very important to both the future of Thor and just the lore of the MCU in general.
Absolutely.
So that's it for us, guys. We'll be back later for a spoiler review. And until next time, stay versed.